Marc, thank you very much for coming to the event. It really is a pleasure having you here. The topic of diabetes to me is one of the most interesting ones in biomedical research, partly because we've moved a long way from the very monolithic view of insulin resistance, the liver, off you go. And now there's a much more complex picture that has emerged that has to do with the contribution of the nervous system, the contribution of the muscle, and some of the contributions you've made in the field of the immune regulation of the process. To me, that's something that was very unexpected. And over time, as you know, you'll have disclosed roles for all kinds of immune cells, all kinds of cytokines. It's coming to be a little bit of a mess. There has been a lot of heat in this area, but I wonder if now there's more light and we can say from these different cell types that have been implicated, these really are the key drivers, or if it truly is a process in which everybody really has something to say from the immune point of view.
Yeah, I think the picture which emerged can be summarized in one word, which is immunometabolism. And it means really that everything works together. So of course there are probably some key players, but it's really that the immune system and the metabolism are all a system working hand in hand in order to restore homeostasis, meaning that the body has to cope with all stress that comes. So in the context of diabetes, the stress comes from the overfeeding, from the too much availability of nutrients, and then it's not just a problem from the fat tissue and the insulin resistance, it's all over the place that the whole body has to cope with that. And the immune system is a primary system to restore the homeostasis in face of stress. So that's from a negative point of view, and therefore also there are some key players. It's the whole immune system which plays a role. And from the other side of the physiological role, the picture which emerged is that also the whole immune system is regulated by metabolism. And we know, for example, if we have a stress, then we have steroid hormone which raise the glucose levels, and it's not just by chance, and it's just to have energy. It's also to give a signal to the immune system that it has to adapt and to look after that.
One of the things that has always struck me about the field of diabetes is that in a way it's been a victim of its own success. There are therapies for diabetes. We've had metformin for a long time. There are new things that are coming up. But the threshold to come up with a new therapy gets higher and higher because people, these being chronic conditions, people expect great safety. And it's no longer enough just to promote glucose metabolism. The drug needs to really have several actions. Do you think that the immune system would be the key to develop new therapies in the area, or it's just interesting from the conceptual point of view?
No, I think we in fact in phase 3 of clinical translation, and in some aspect we even can bring it already now to patient because in other conditions which are associated with diabetes, we know that if we change the immune system, we improve diabetes. An example is if you have gout arthritis, then you can antagonize IL-1 and it will improve the gout, and as a bystander it will also improve the diabetes. So it's certainly something which I'm quite sure will enter and is in some way already in the clinic, not with a primary aim to improve diabetes, but currently as a bystander. And the development is to have it as a primary focus. So as you say correctly, it's not just about today to improve glycemia, it's to change something in the disease, because we have already many drugs starting with insulin which improve diabetes. But what we want is to change first of all the progression of the disease, and this is largely dictated by the progressive loss of insulin production. And there we have there is a lot of data showing that an inflammation is responsible for the progressive loss of insulin production, and that could be antagonized by some anti-inflammatory drugs. But on top of that, cardiologists have clear data that the cardiovascular disease has an inflammatory compound. And if this holds true, then if you will modulate the inflammation with the aim of improving the diabetes, you may also improve the complication of diabetes like cardiovascular disease, and there is where the field is going. It's trying not just to improve blood glucose, but really what we call correctly, I think, the metabolic syndrome, with all different parts of this syndrome, which is hypertension, which is cardiovascular disease, retinal disease, nephropathy, and so on. And the common link between all these areas seems more and more to be a pathological activation of the immune system. So by finding target there, we may improve all these areas. Now, a big issue is, of course, the safety, and that's for a chronic disease like diabetes crucial, because people have long years and we don't want to harm them. But today we have some very precise way to modulate the immune system, and already some of these drugs are, as said, in phase 3, and it seems to be quite safe, some of them more safe than other one, and that will largely also dictate the development.
I think that you allude to something very profound, the complications from diabetes, which is a very important and medical need, and that has received little attention. I think that you're right, that the future is in dealing not only with diabetes per se, but with all of these complications. I think that's very interesting. And another thing you were alluding to early on, if I understood you correctly, has to do with, if we think about the involvement of the immune system in other pathologies, say Alzheimer's disease, in which there's infiltration of immune cells into the brain, and other conditions, people tend to think about inflammation as a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's positive because it's a way in which the organism is trying to protect against certain form of damage, but then it becomes problematic later on. I wonder if people in the field of diabetes have thought about it that way too, or if we only see it as a chronic state of inflammation and that's why it's bad, and it doesn't really have any beneficial effect.
No, you point to absolutely correct point. There is a lot of evidence showing that the immune system has also beneficial part, and every inflammation at the beginning is here to restore the normal situation, as you correctly said. And for example, in the pancreatic islets, where you have the insulin production, if you completely block the inflammation and you harm the cells, then the regeneration is impaired. So there is a need to have some level of inflammation to adapt. And it's just if it is too much and too long that it comes, like in other inflammatory disease, deleterious. But at the beginning, there is a lot of data showing that, for example, if you give very low concentration of some pro-inflammatory factors like interleukin-1 beta, you will have proliferation of beta cell, you will have more insulin secretion. And it's only if you give it too much and too long that it becomes deleterious. So it's the same principle. And I think when I started by the concept of immunometabolism, because a lot of things which are correct in immunology are also correct in the context of metabolism, and these also relates to this point.
Well, thank you once again for agreeing to come, and I look forward to your talk later today. Thanks.